You tell yourself it's just another video, just something to give you a little spark before you start. A voice to fill the quiet room. A few powerful words to remind you that you're meant for more. And for a moment, it works. Your chest feels lighter. Your heart beats faster. You can almost see that new version of yourself standing at the edge of tomorrow, focused, unstoppable, free. But then the video ends. The room is silent again, and that version of you disappears, like a dream you can't quite remember. You tell yourself you'll watch one more. Maybe the next one will stick. Maybe this speaker, this message, this moment will finally change everything. But it never does, because you're not really looking for a plan. You're looking for a feeling, a moment of relief from the weight of not moving, a small dose of clarity to drown out the noise in your head. And motivation gives you exactly that, a temporary escape that feels like progress. You think you're waking up, but really, you're falling deeper asleep. It's strange, isn't it? How you can listen to the most powerful words in the world and still feel paralyzed. How you can watch hundreds of people talk about discipline, yet never find the strength to build your own. Because the truth, no one wants to admit is simple. It's easier to feel inspired than it is to be consistent. Inspiration gives you the illusion of movement. Consistency demands silence, boredom, and pain. And we've all been taught to choose the feeling over the fight. So you keep scrolling. You keep chasing that next hit of, "You can do it," because it's safer to believe in change than to live it. The self-help world has become a new kind of entertainment. A place where people watch others climb mountains, but never lace their own boots. A theater of ambition, where motivation is the movie, and you're the audience applauding from your couch. You start to measure your growth not by what you do but by what you consume. The number of books read, the podcasts finished, the motivational shorts saved, but none of it replaces the single act of actually starting. And deep down, you know that. That's why the fire fades so quickly, because the brain can't be tricked forever. It knows the difference between action and imagination. It knows when you're living and when you're hiding. So every time you finish another video, there's that quiet ache inside you, a small whisper saying, "I've heard all this before," because you have. You just haven't lived it yet. At first, you tell yourself you're preparing, you're learning, you're waiting for the right time, the right plan, the right mindset. But somewhere in that waiting, you stopped moving. You became addicted to the idea of progress, not the reality of it. You fell in love with becoming but forgot how to begin. You see, motivation is seductive. It gives you all the emotions of growth without requiring any of the work. It whispers, "You're changing," when all you've really done is sit still and listen to someone else talk about it. And that's how it gets you. Not by lying, but by keeping you comfortable, by convincing you that reflection is enough, that insight equals change, that one day the feeling will finally be strong enough to force you to move. But that day never comes, because change doesn't arrive wrapped in motivation. It arrives disguised as discomfort, as the moment you least want to act, as the quiet decision to do what doesn't feel exciting, what doesn't feel inspiring, but what needs to be done. Motivation tells you to wait until you're ready. Reality tells you you'll never be. So most people stay stuck in the waiting room, watching the same videos, hearing the same speeches, repeating the same promises to themselves. It's a strange kind of addiction, one that looks healthy from the outside. You're not wasting time, right? You're learning, you're growing, you're working on yourself. But deep down, you know what's really happening. You're avoiding the silence that comes after inspiration fades. You're running from the part where it's just you, your fear, and a decision. And no video can make that decision for you. Maybe that's the dark truth people don't want to hear. That motivation isn't the first step of success. It's often the last step before avoidance. Because once you've been inspired, you feel like you've done something. You've scratched the itch. You've numbed the guilt. And that's where most people stay. In that comfortable space between dreaming and doing, between planning and acting, between who they are and who they say they'll become. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to leave. Because every new video gives you just enough hope to survive another day without moving, and you start confusing the rush of wanting change with the act of creating it. That's what escapism really looks like. Not drugs, not alcohol, but endless inspiration. An emotional high that keeps you safe from your own potential. You keep saying you're waiting for the right moment, but maybe what you're really waiting for is a version of yourself that doesn't feel afraid. A version that wakes up ready, confident, and clear. The kind of person you see in those videos, calm under pressure, glowing with purpose. But that person doesn't exist yet, and they never will. Not until you start building them. That's the cruel trick of constant motivation. It gives you the picture of who you could be, but never shows you the real path to become them. Because that path isn't cinematic. It's not a highlight reel. It's slow, repetitive, and lonely. It's waking up tired and doing it anyway. It's making mistakes and fixing them quietly when no one's watching. It's facing yourself, the real you, the one who keeps promising change and never delivers. That confrontation is what most people run from, and motivation gives them the perfect place to hide. Every time you hit play, you feel like you're becoming better, but all you're really doing is pressing pause on your potential. You're outsourcing your belief to someone else's voice, hoping they'll say something strong enough to make you move. But here's the truth you already know: no one's coming. No one can push you into action long enough to make it last, because no one else has to live with your choices. You do. You can fill your mind with quotes and your screen with speeches, but none of it will matter until you face the thing you keep avoiding. That quiet moment when there's nothing left to learn, nothing left to watch, and it's just you and your next move. That's the point where most people break. They go back to the comfort of motivation, because it feels safer to keep wanting to change than to risk actually changing. And that's what escapism truly is. Not laziness, not weakness, but fear disguised as preparation. Fear of failure. Fear of commitment. Fear that maybe you're not special after all. But here's the paradox. The only way to become special is to face that fear directly. To act even when you feel unworthy. To build without knowing if it'll ever work. No motivational video will ever make that easier, because it's not supposed to be easy. That's what no one tells you. That motivation isn't meant to carry you. It's meant to remind you, just once, before you start carrying yourself. But somewhere along the way, the reminder became a routine, and the routine became a trap. You started mistaking the feeling of being inspired for the experience of being alive. But inspiration isn't life. It's just a glimpse of what life could be if you finally decided to start living it. There comes a point where the words stop working, where every quote sounds recycled, every speech feels familiar, and every "you got this" starts to echo through an empty room. That's when you begin to feel it, that quiet exhaustion. Not the kind that comes from working hard, but the kind that comes from never beginning. A weariness born from chasing the same feeling again and again, without ever getting closer to what you actually want. You start to realize that maybe motivation was never the solution. Maybe it was just a pause button. A way to delay the moment when you'd have to face yourself. Because the truth is, all the motivation in the world can't replace the moment you decide to act, especially when it's uncomfortable, when it's boring, when it feels pointless. That's where the real transformation hides, in the quiet corners of effort no one sees. No cameras, no validation, just you and the work. And it's in those moments, Barthen, when you feel like quitting, when there's no inspiration left, that you finally begin to grow. That's when you stop escaping. That's when you stop chasing the illusion of readiness, because you understand something that motivational speakers rarely say. You don't act after you feel inspired, you act to feel inspired. Action creates belief. Discipline creates clarity. Consistency creates identity. You don't need another speech to remind you of that. You just need silence long enough to remember who you are beneath all the noise. Maybe the point of all those motivational videos wasn't to keep you watching. Maybe it was to bring you here, to this moment, where you finally stop chasing, stop consuming, stop escaping, and start living. You see, motivation isn't evil, it's just incomplete. It was only ever meant to open the door. But you've been standing in the doorway for years, afraid to step through because it's dark inside. But that darkness isn't failure. It's where you build things that last. It's where you find your own strength. It's where you stop performing potential and start living purpose. When you finally understand that, you stop needing to be hyped, you stop craving speeches, you stop waiting for perfect timing. You start small, quiet, imperfect, but real, and that's where life begins again. Because the end of escapism is not emptiness, it's clarity. It's standing in the silence and realizing you no longer need someone else's words to move you. You've become your own reason, your own push, your own proof. That's when the noise fades and the peace comes. Not the fake kind that comes from comfort, but the real kind that comes from control. The calm of knowing you're finally in motion. And that's all you ever needed, not another spark, not another guru, just the courage to stop running from your own potential. There's a strange peace that comes after you stop chasing. The next motivational high, it's quiet, almost empty. You wake up, scroll, and realize there's nothing left to chase, no new trick, no new morning routine, just you and the reality you've been running from. It feels heavy at first, like you've lost something, the spark, the drive, the why, but that's not loss, that's withdrawal. You've been addicted to inspiration, a constant flood of borrowed energy. Now, for the first time, you're sober, and sobriety feels strange because real progress isn't loud, it's slow. It's uncomfortable. It's made of quiet mornings where nothing feels different. But you show up anyway. No music, no speeches, no cinematic edits, just reality. And the slow realization that this dull repetition is what actually builds you. Every motivational speaker tells you to believe in yourself. But belief doesn't come first. It's not a mindset you turn on, it's something you earn. One action at a time. You don't believe because you're confident. You believe because you kept going, even when you weren't. That's the truth they don't sell. Because it doesn't look good in a thumbnail, it doesn't trend, it doesn't make you feel good, right? Now, but it's real, and that's what Unhyped is about. The part no one talks about. The unfiltered, unedited version of change, because here's the dark truth. Motivation isn't meant to carry you. It's meant to wake you up. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable enough to start, but you were never supposed to live off it. The speeches, the montages, the quotes, they're meant to light a fire, not replace the act of building something that lasts. So maybe it's time to stop being inspired and start being disciplined, to stop fantasizing about potential and start facing your reality. The quiet truth is, you're not missing motivation, you're missing momentum. And momentum doesn't come from hype. It comes from one small, boring, consistent step that no one claps for. That's the step that changes everything. That's the step no one can give you. That's the step you have to take alone. And when you finally do, when you stop waiting to feel ready, when you stop escaping through inspiration, something shifts. The noise fades, the pressure lifts, and for the first time in a long time, you feel real peace. Not the peace of comfort, but the peace of control. The calm that comes when you finally realize you don't need another voice to tell you to move. You already knew what to do. You were just afraid to do it without applause, but now it's just you, and that's enough. Unhyped and reality over rhetoric, because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard.